Okay, let's move on to our end of the season awards because this is always fun to do. It's fun to look at how someone would consider an MVP, so let's start right there. In your eyes, in Northeast Indiana football, regardless of class, regardless of conference, who was the most valuable player in your eyes?
Easy for me, Jai Wright for Homestead, the quarterback. I mean, tremendous job with his arm, with his legs. He was the one guy that you looked at and said, if you take this person away from this football team, they're significantly less powerful and less of a threat to win. And that was Jai Wright all season long, what he did with his arm, passing the ball, but more with his legs. I mean, he kept defenses off balance all season long, was tremendous in the majority of games that Homestead played. When you took him away like Snyder did in the postseason, you saw just how ineffective Homestead was. So I don't think it's even close. For me, the MVP of the area, Jai Wright.
I agree with you. I think he was the guy that, like you said, if you took him off the team, how would the team fare? It would be a big gap. The second guy I would say would be in that same ilk, and also at the quarterback position, Andrew McCormick.
Sure.
He had weapons last year. Some guys grew into bigger roles this year, but he was the guy from the get-go. As he goes, East Noble goes, so I think he's up in that consideration. Also, Lawrence Johnson, I think you would say he's one of the best players in the area without question. I think the one thing that hurts him is the fact that Snyder is so good defensively.
Yeah.
You know, if you pull Lawrence out of the game, obviously Snyder's defense is not as good, but they are so good even without him. You know, you'd have McDowell up front, Hoover, France. I mean, they're a team that with their depth could weather a loss like Lawrence Johnson, but that shouldn't take away, I guess, from the excellence that we saw on Friday nights with the Purdue recruit. Also, I thought, you know, Drew Schultz and Logan Macklin might split.
Sure.
You know, if you're an AC guy, they might split votes if you were voting on this.
Yeah.
But I do agree. I think Jai Wright was the man from day one and lived up to those expectations at home.
Yeah, and to your point with that duo from Adams Central, true MVPs because of the role they played both offensively and defensively.
Right.
Logan Macklin leading that team in tackles and Drew Schultz being that big guy in the middle of that defense. So no doubt you can make a case for both those guys.
Coach of the year. Who do you think did the best coaching job? Who would be your coach of the year this year?
Well, we always take for granted what Kurt Tippmann does every year and Chris Schwarzkopf what he does every year, but I think it's difficult to give it to anybody other than Andy Thomas for Angola and what they were able to do throughout the season, undefeated regular season, win a sectional championship, advance, and play Bishop Dwenger there. What Andy Thomas has done, a good roster, a talented roster, but by no means do we look at that group of guys and say, this is a team that's going to go 9-0 in the regular season, beat the likes of Jimtown and Leo and the teams they did. So, and Garrett, so you throw them in. So Andy Thomas is my guy. I think he is bar none Coach of the Year.
That's interesting that you say that because he was on my short list, but I was thinking Schwarzkopf.
Okay.
And the reason being is we didn't know what to expect from Bishop Dwenger.
Sure.
And all of a sudden, Dwenger gets into the playoffs. They're playing their best football. We're like, I don't know. I don't know what they have. And then they go up to Angola, beat them 34-0, and, you know, obviously made a trip to semi-state. I had Schwarzkopf on my short list because I think in so many years, like you said, we expect so much from Dwenger. We expect so much from Snyder. We expect Homestead to win a ton of games.
Sure.
So I guess in that respect, I had Schwarzkopf as my guy.
Yeah, and to a similar vein with Angola, that's not a roster with Bishop Dwenger that instills fear in very many people, particularly skill position-wise. I mean, you saw the dichotomy at quarterback trying to settle on a guy. You lose your senior quarterback, Patrick O'Keefe comes in, plays reasonably well, but at times looked like a sophomore. Lose Jordan Hudson to injury, and Chip Clark steps in there as the primary ball carrier, was tremendous. Outside receivers, decent, but by no means deadly in terms of what they do. So. Very good points, and particularly what they lost defensively, too. Losing guys like Frankie Yanko and Peter Winklejohn to graduation, what they were able to do defensively was tremendous as well.
Let's move on to Team of the Year. Who would you select as your Team of the Year?
I have to go with Woodland still. Just being able to get to the state championship, third year is a charm for them, losing in semi-state at Whiting 2 years ago, get clipped by South Adams in sectional. And you felt, are they going to be able to do it? I mean, the expectations that were put on this team, particularly this year, knowing it was the last chance for a lot of these, for all the seniors, but a lot of their role guys that have been multi-year starters, the pressure was on. And I think for Woodland, it helped tremendously losing a couple games in the regular season. Because the last 2 years, we saw them go undefeated in the regular season and felt maybe they needed that reality check a little bit and to challenge them. Getting knocked off Week 9 against Adams Central, I think, carried them to the state championship game because it made them refocus and look really seeing this as the last opportunity and not being number one like they were last year, or being highly ranked like they were a couple years ago, helped them. They succeeded in all their goals, obviously, except the last one, but to get to the state championship, I think, to me, mission accomplished for the Woodland Warriors. They're my team of the year.
Yeah, I was thinking Woodland as well, but I also had to, if we had a tournament of teams in Fort Wayne, I mean, Snyder would be, the way they dominated, Carroll and some of those teams in the regular season, it's hard to overlook what Snyder did. So I would have Woodland as like 1A and like Snyder as 1B.
Yeah, it's so difficult to compare a 2A team to a 6A team.
Right.
And what Snyder had to face with Carmel, nearly knocking them off. Of course, Carmel gets beat by Penn, and then everybody was going to get beat by Ben Davis. I think that was realistic, that nobody was going to beat them if Ben Davis is playing well. So for what Snyder was able to do, having to step up in class, and I don't want to take away anything from the SAC schedule, but achieving what they did with the schedule they play, you don't really get challenged most weeks. I mean, that's a Snyder team that, against a majority of teams every Friday, has them beat before the opening kickoff. And what is Snyder learning on Friday nights? Playing Southside and Northside and those kind of teams, whereas most of the 6A teams, particularly in Marion County down in Indy, are beating up on each other and learning from playing Center Grove and Carmel and Hamilton Southeastern and Fishers and all those teams. I mean, so what Snyder is able to accomplish with what they have to deal with schedule-wise, I think goes undervalued and underappreciated.
I agree. That's why I appreciated them.
Well, see, maybe you're onto something here.
Finally, surprise of the year. What was your biggest surprise of this high school football season, good or bad?
I think you throw Angola in there, the surprise that they did. Concordia, too. I felt like last year we'd say it was a magical season for the cadets and felt like, man, that was their year. And now they're going to drop back to earth. We've seen how bad Concordia can be, but to Tim Manigold's credit and those kids' credit, not allowing that senior group to take all that accolades that they did last year, and then Concordia dropping back down, I feel like they're a sectional champion if they don't lose their quarterback. I feel like they were better than Bishop Luers at every position, most positions, enough to win in the postseason. We saw them dominate Luers in the regular season. So Concordia, because they didn't slide as much as we felt they would, and then Angola, of course, going undefeated in the regular season. I feel that was the true surprise.
And you really started to appreciate what Angola was able to do, I think, once you got to the postseason and they started to have to go on the road and play good teams in overtime, 2 road overtime victories in the playoffs, that's when you said, okay, you know what? It's not a product of the schedule. It's not a product of the conference. This is a legitimately good football team. Yeah,
they played good teams in the regular season. Leo, Jimtown, throw Garrett in there, but we felt, okay, 4A, we're really going to find out how good this team is. A lot of us expected the reality to set in sectional, and it didn't. Angola played up to those teams, beat some good teams, like you mentioned, on the road, back-to-back overtime victories. So, yeah, they proved that they belonged in the postseason. Just ran into the Bishop Dwenger buzzsaw, as many teams do.
Finally, to wrap things up for this season, what's your biggest takeaway from 2017 in terms of high school football in Northeast Indiana?
Well, I think the bar continues to be raised with so many of these programs, and it's fascinating to watch some of these teams come out of nowhere. Nobody really expected Concordia to win a state championship last year. Nobody expected Angola to be as good this year, and we kind of expected Woodland to be there too. But we wanted to see it happen, and they did, and they get to the state championship. So it's fun to watch the Blue Bloods and Snyder and DeWanger and Homestead and Luers. But it's also a lot of fun to watch other teams do well and continue to get better, and other teams making that deep postseason run and even get down to state.
All right. Well, that puts a wrap on Inside the Zone. We appreciate you joining us every Monday to Monday morning quarterbacking.
I am always surprised when you ask me back for another week.
Yes, and that is what we do because we don't pay you. So it's good exposure, but you know what? We appreciate you coming in every week and your expert analysis. It's been fun, and hopefully we'll be back for another season next fall when 2018 rolls around. He's Justin. I'm Glenn. We'll see you next year. I was going to say next week.